Are you having a hard time finding great investment properties? Unfortunately, the best deals are rarely found locally. Successful investing begins with the right properties in the right markets. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best deals across the United States. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly cash flow. Learn how to find the best deals by downloading your free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Passive Real Estate Investing at noradarealestate.com. That's NORADA realestate.com.
You are listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast with Buck Joffrey. Get ready to change your life.
Welcome, everybody. This is Buck Joffrey with the Wealth Formula Podcast, and Happy New Year to everyone out there. It has been a very, very big and productive year at Wealth Formula, and I'm hoping you're enjoying the show. This is really the first completion of the first full year of the show, and I think it's been quite successful. Had some phenomenal people on the show, great following. You know, we've got the fantastic credit investor group. It's only going to get better, ladies and gentlemen. So again, Happy New Year. And with that, let's get started. So the first and foremost, again, drawing your attention to wealthformula.com. Make sure to go there and check it out. There's lots of resources on there for you, whether it's signing up for the weekly wealth widget or, getting a free copy of my book, 7 Secrets of Eternal Wealth, which is, it was, an Amazon bestseller. And now it's there for you to simply download for free as a PDF. And you can also do that simply by texting me as well. All you have to do is text 44222 and type in Wealth Formula. That's one word, Wealth Formula. Again, that's 44222, Wealth Formula, and you can get a copy of 7 Secrets of Eternal Wealth. I also want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, American Homeowner Preservation, George Newberry's company that does good deeds for people and makes investors money. They basically buy failing mortgages for pennies on the dollar, turn around and give people an option for renegotiated mortgages. And because they buy these mortgages for pennies on the dollar from the banks, everybody wins. People get to stay in their homes. They get to pay a price they can afford. And you, the investor, get a 12% preferred return. By the way, George just did a webinar for us. This is the last fund that he'll be doing 12%. It's going to go down to 10, so make sure you get in as soon as possible. American Homeowner Preservation, and that's ahpfunding.com. As far as today's show, this is a special one. So, one of the interesting things about getting older is that you have the ability to look back and tell a story about yourself. Effectively, to create a narrative about the moments and the people that, for better or for worse, forever changed the course of your life. I remember the day I decided to become a doctor. I remember the day I met my wife. I remember my wife and I looking at a positive pregnancy test together that eventually became my oldest daughter. I mean, these are just like moments. They were like pivoting moments, and they became my future, right? A lot of times these things that kind of happen in fleeting moments don't seem that significant, but over time you realize how quickly on a day-to-day basis little things happen that end up making an enormous impact, enormous, on the direction of your future. Can you think of something like that in your life? I bet you can. So one of these moments for me came on the way back from my honeymoon in Puerto Vallarta. Now, my wife and I got married the day after I graduated from residency, and this was in July of 2008. And as soon as we got married, the next day we left for Mexico. And after, I think it was a week or two, I can't even remember, but on the way back, I remember I was looking for something to read on the plane. I was in the airport. It was a dingy bookstore. You know how those Mexican airports, they kind of, it's really any third world airport, actually. They always have that sort of dingy smell about them. Well, there was a little bookstore. There wasn't much in there. I was just looking for a little, something to read. And it was mostly full of romance novels. The pictures of the guy with the long hair and, waving in the breeze and that kind of thing. I wasn't really interested in that. The only book that sounded remotely interesting was a purple book called The Cash Flow Quadrant. Now, I didn't know anything about money at the time, but I knew I was finally going to start making some after years as a broke surgical resident. So I decided, hey, why not learn something? Pretty soon I'm going to not be living sort of, just paycheck to paycheck. So I bought the book. And at that moment, I had no idea that making that decision to buy the book in this third world airport would forever change the course of my life. I'm not exaggerating, folks. I don't know how to make this sound more impactful than it was. My identity at that time was as an academic surgeon. I had made my mark by success in academics, writing academic papers and book chapters, etc. The only financial education I had in my life was a macroeconomics class that I took in the last quarter of my senior year of college just to meet a requirement. And I took it pass, fail, so I could do the bare minimum. Listen, one of the gripes that we have sometimes as high-paid professionals, physicians, lawyers, whatever, we don't get financial education. Well, listen, I didn't even want financial education. I had no interest in money and no interest in investing. Like many doctors, like many medical students, like many, other professionals out there who are training for a craft that they think is noble or worthy of their brain power. I thought of money as dirty and something that people with manners didn't talk about. Does that sound familiar? I bet it does, particularly for those of you in the health field. I mean, I don't know. It's like a taboo topic for doctors in particular. Like, money's dirty. Like, we can't talk about money. We shouldn't talk about money. We shouldn't talk about reimbursement. We shouldn't talk about this stuff. Anyway, I was completely brainwashed. I was like those guys. And I fundamentally didn't understand what it meant to be an entrepreneur. I mean, I didn't understand what it meant, the idea of just being a creative person who creates your own enterprise, your own industry. It didn't even occur to me, much less consider whether or not I would like to be an entrepreneur myself. I mean, you have to actually understand what the concept is before you can put yourself in the game, right? So I was way behind on this. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that reading the cash flow quadrant had no less effect on me than being struck by lightning. I mean, seriously. After all, who am I now? So if I think about this and just try to, I wrote this down really quickly. Who am I? I'm an entrepreneur. I am an investor. I am a financial educator. I am a husband and father to 3 little girls. I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan, and we're going to the Super Bowl. I am a board-certified surgeon who doesn't practice anymore. So this is my stream of thought when I honestly ask myself who I am today, and that's the order it comes into my mind, right? And so, I was 34 years old when I finished my surgical training. And this was the culmination of my formal education. Thousands upon thousands of hours of study and long hours in the hospital. This was before the 80-hour work week. I remember working like 120 hours when I was a neurosurgery intern. And all of this time, all of this energy went in to create this identity for myself of a surgeon. And now it's number 6 on my list. Number 6. And to be clear, the only thing I regret about this list is that I didn't get to this point quicker. I just think about this. We all grow up with talents, right? And many of which we'll never know. I mean, think about it this way. If you're a hockey fan, you know who Wayne Gretzky is, right? The greatest hockey player who ever lived. But what if Wayne Gretzky grew up in sub-Saharan Africa? he would never see ice, what would he have done? Would he have just been an above average, whatever they're playing in sub-Saharan Africa, maybe soccer or something like that? It is a true gift to be able to find your true calling and have the ability to go for it. And sometimes, just like the fact that Gretzky was born in Canada, sometimes it just takes a little bit of luck. Now, I'm no Gretzky in anything, really. But for me, this was a moment of luck because I stumbled upon the work of Robert Kiyosaki, and he introduced me to something that I'm very good at. And that really, for me, was a calling in life. And having him on Wealth Formula Podcast today, for me, represents a really momentous milestone in my journey. So when we come back, please indulge me as I interview the man whose work, more than anyone else in the world, has guided me to where I am today, Mr. Robert Kiyosaki. Hey, it's Buck Joffrey. You know how I feel about the stock market. So what would it take for me to invest in the S&P 500? Well, you'd have to minimize fees. You'd have to give me most of the upside of the market and none of the downside. That's right. I don't like losing money. You'd have to let me leverage my gains so that I could amplify my returns. And you'd have to let my money grow tax-free. Think I'm crazy, right? Guess what? I found a strategy that does exactly this and more. It's called Velocity Plus, and it's available to you if you make at least $100,000 per year. To learn more about this life-changing and mind-boggling strategy, go to wealthformulabanking.com. Again, that's wealthformulabanking.com. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, my guest, well, he needs little introduction. He is a prolific financial author whose work includes the #1 personal finance book of all time, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and his most recent book, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. His words have inspired a generation of entrepreneurs, including me, and for that, I couldn't be more grateful. So it is with great honor that I welcome Robert Kiyosaki to Wealth Formula Podcast. Welcome, Robert.
Well, thank you, Doctor.
It's nice to have you on this show, and it's funny that you're calling me doctor, but I appreciate it. I guess some people still do. But Robert, the latest book, fantastic as usual. I think you described it as sort of the graduate version of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it's Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, and it addresses some really important issues in our world right now. And one of those problems, I think, is the widening wealth gap between the rich and poor. Can you explain to my audience,
Sure.
How is our educational system contributing to the problem rather than making it better?
Well, that's a great question. That's kind of my they call it shtick.
Yeah.
I've been ranting and raving on this for much of my adult life. Anyway, there's many reasons the rich are getting richer, and the poor middle class get poor. So there's not just one. But one of the ones I followed is in 1971, President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. And I didn't really know about it until 1972. I was a pilot flying in Vietnam. And my rich dad sent me a letter while I was on board the aircraft carrier. And he says, watch out, the world's going to change. And I really had no idea what he was talking about, like 25, 26 years old. And so I went looking for gold because, back then, the 70s, it was illegal for Americans to own gold. So that was kind of where the light started to go on in my head. And today I realize our school system is still pre-1971. Our school system stuck in the industrial age. And as you know, we've gone past the information age. And now we're in the knowledge age. And what I mean by that is we have got to keep updating our knowledge on probably a daily basis right now because things are changing so fast. But our school teachers, most of them are stuck on, with the Neanderthal.
Right.
and when they took dollar off the gold standard, there was a thing called, they call it quantitative easing today and all this. Very simply, in simple terms, they print money. So that's why if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, lesson number one is the most important lesson, which most people miss, is the rich don't work for money. Because today money is no longer money. It's technically a fiat currency, but worse than that, a fiat currency's purpose is to make those that work for it poorer. In other words, when you work for the U.S. dollar or the yuan or the peso or the yen, you're actually getting poorer.
Right.
Not richer, because it's fake. So that's why I keep saying I'm saying what I'm doing. So the people, as you know, that are being crushed are those that actually work for money. And, doctors, lawyers, accountants, dentists are all trapped in that trap.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the concern about the shrinking middle class, I've heard you talk about this, and the interesting thing about that is that it's not just coming from the left, right? People think, well, it's just Bernie Sanders, and he's the only one who cares about this issue. But really, it's coming from everywhere. I mean, the Cook brothers, I've heard them talking about it. I think Muhammad Al-Arian was talking a little bit about this on your show. Why is this socioeconomic problem of the shrinking middle class and this disparity, why is it a problem for everyone?
It's a simple word, social unrest. I think you look at how, I don't know how to say it, how much chaos and violence are inside the system today. And it was Steve Forbes who said it. Like when money was gold, you could trust gold. But today when money is fake, who do you trust? And today we trust, there's fake news, fake teachers, fake assets, fake money. And this uncertainty, I'm sure eats at the psyche of people who know something is wrong, but they don't know what is wrong. And so that's why I always refer back to 1971, and our school teachers are still preparing kids for 1965 or Happy Days, with Ron Howard.
Right. Well, I've always found it sort of curious that, the educational system, as you've mentioned before, its roots are really in the Prussian system, right? This industrial revolution model where it's almost like a kid goes from one place to another and gets a little bit of education dropped onto it and then down the conveyor belt to the next. Now, why do you think that system, is there something that's keeping that system from changing, even despite its sort of potential, I guess, irrelevance or lack of connection with modern society?
Well, if you look at who's running the Fed today, they aren't bankers. They're school teachers.
Right.
Janet Yellen's a school teacher. Ben Bernanke's a school teacher. And Alan Greenspan's a liar.
Right.
And he was the guy, or he flip-flopped, should I say. Greenspan was very much into the hard money guy, the Austrian School of Economics, and he was into our monetary or our currency should be backed by something stable. And he's the one that helped, he just perpetuated the printing of money. And so today we have these school teachers, and as you know, most school teachers are like my poor dad. They may be nice people, but they're not smart people financially. Most of them have always had a paycheck. And when you're a person who is working for money, you don't have a pension, you don't have any savings anymore, and these academic types with their PhDs are trying to run the world, and the problem with an academic, they can't admit they've made a mistake.
Yeah.
And so they've destroyed our world in the last probably 15, 20 years. So the U.S. dollar, according to who you talk to, is going to crash. No fiat currency has ever survived. And the U.S. dollar has lost 95% of its value since, 1971. And still parents say to kids, go to school, get a job, work for money, and save money. Are you nuts?
Right.
Are you nuts? Why would you save something when the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not really a bank and it's not federal, is printing money? And on top of that, you go back in history, as I always talk about, in 1913, the Fed was created, but also 1913 was the start of the Internal Revenue Service. Because if you understand money, money does not exist without debt and taxes. In other words, you have to print money using debt, the U.S. dollar's debt, But to pay for it back, you have to suck taxes out of those who work for money, the working class. So this gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger, where a person like myself and Donald Trump, we don't pay any taxes legally. So that's why the rich is getting richer about. It's really about debt and taxes, because in 1971, the U.S. dollar became debt. And the only way they can pay for that is with taxes. So the working class, anybody like you, Doc, if you're working, you're a surgeon and you're working for money, you're being screwed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, one of the things that you said too is that part of the issue is that these people, it's like smart people who are running the Fed, right? They're people who have done extremely well in school. I mean, they're all, MIT grads, et cetera. And so there's a certain hubris that almost prevents them from sort of seeing sort of the realities of the economy and perpetuates the problem in a way. Do you think that's fair?
I would say that's absolutely fair. I don't think they even know, like I was listening to James Rickards, and he said, they asked Janet Yellen, does Janet Yellen even know that she and Bernanke have created the biggest stock market bubble in history? And his friend says no, because they're not investors, they're employees.
Right.
They don't have any idea. Yellen, Bernanke, this next guy they're going to hire, they're academic employee types.
The thing about the smart people issue, I have, on this show, there's a lot of smart people listening. And this is one of the challenges, I think, not people who are I think, listening to this show because I talk, I have drank the Kool-Aid, the Kiyosaki Kool-Aid, so to speak. And I feel like I was blind at one point, and I can see. And the people who listen to this are the same way. But it's incredibly difficult to convince most doctors, most lawyers, most CPAs that there's this other way to look at the world, a other way to look at money, because I think what happens is that we're so used to being very, very good at school that we think we know everything. And part of the problem there is we only know what we're taught, right? And
Correct.
we're just used to being so good at being smart, quote unquote smart, and learning what we're taught that we don't think that there's a possibility that we're wrong. And we don't think about the possibility that conventional wisdom is wrong.
Correct. Well,
Right.
It's just different points of view, different mindsets.
Right.
Like I am a professional investor, from the inside. I don't buy stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs because I don't have to.
Right.
Because I call those things retail assets.
Yeah.
It's like going to Walmart and buying a stock or a bond or some, I just don't have to do that. But
Right.
I'd rather be an insider investor. If you played my cash flow game, those are those guys on the fast track of the board game, and everybody else is trapped in the rat race, buying stocks, bonds, mutual funds, getting out of debt, investing for the long term in the stock market, and working harder and harder, only to move into a higher tax bracket, which is nuts.
Right.
and
right.
then they save money. Oh my God, why would you save it when they printed? I don't know how many trillions. I hear so many different numbers about how many trillions of dollars they printed, and I sit there and I go, "You went to college? You should get a refund."
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. So if you could redesign the public school system today, what would it look like?
I'd probably fire everybody, but that wouldn't be optimal.
Right,
I don't know. You'd have to almost start as an entrepreneur, because I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. You'd have to start a skunk works, kind of like what Jobs did or what entrepreneurs did. It's kind of a test program. It's like when Jobs got kicked out of Apple. He created another program to do a prototype project because Apple was going down the wrong track under Scully.
Right.
So a lot of times you have to start with prototype programs. And, they're making progress in that area, but they have that Khan Academy and all that stuff. The trouble is they're still teaching the same old garbage that has no value in real life. It's good for getting a job, and it's good on your resume. I have a PhD, I have this and all this. But you still don't know jack about money. and it goes back to 1971. And that's why the first lesson in Rich Dad Poor Dad was number one: the rich don't work for money. You know, I want to work for assets that produce cash flow. That's why Rich Dad taught me playing Monopoly. And that's why we go on the real estate guys cruise where you and I talk all the time and all this, because I'd rather hang out with guys working for assets rather than somebody who's high income, or a movie star with high income, or a sports star with making millions. But they have no assets. They have cash. They have savings. They have stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. But I don't touch that stuff. So, not that it's good or bad. It's that I don't have to. I have other options.
Right, right. So, you know, I've heard you talk, and we actually talked a little bit about this on the cruise in April. Then I thought it was really interesting, and I asked you then kind of, you know, what's your mission, and yours, and it's clearly financial education, right? And that's what you care about.
No, is to elevate the financial well-being of humanity.
Right.
It's funny, you know, our company has been, you know, I don't work in my company anymore, but it seems they forgot the mission, you know.
Right, sure.
And right now we're a tech company.
Right, right. Well,
you know, and if you know me, I can't even use my cell phone. So I'm kind of, you know, that's like most entrepreneurs. Once they're out, they're out. The company has no use for them.
Sure, sure.
So
why
I
is
sit
this
on the outside?
Why is this issue? I mean, why is this issue so important to you? I mean, what drives you?
Well, because you listen to Kim and I, both our fathers got fired.
Right.
And they lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you something, you know. Here's my father, a PhD, and her father had his master's degree, and they couldn't find jobs. This is back in the 70s. And it cuts it like castrates a man, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They don't have the high-paying job. They're unemployed. Both men tried to start small businesses. My father bought a small ice cream franchise and lost everything. They just don't have it. If you train to think like an employee, which is go to school, get a job, and save money, pay your taxes, you can't think like an entrepreneur. Your mind's already atrophied. It's got you know, calcium deposits.
Right.
As you would know.
Well, right. At some point, yes.
It's called arthritis of creative mind.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of high-paid professionals, again, I think really suffer from that because we're so used to, we're so used to being right that it's and being just, to us, being right is just getting the right answer. When somebody gives you a test, you get the right answer, and so you have that enough where you almost develop these Pavlovian sort of pathways that make it virtually impossible for you to think out of the box. It's really remarkable to me as an entrepreneur to look around at other, you know, really successful entrepreneurs. I'm almost always the only guy in the room with a significant academic pedigree. It's remarkable.
Where is this?
Yeah.
At the real estate guys cruise?
Well, not so much. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, when I talk about having an advanced degree or a medical degree or, you know, going to an Ivy League school, all this stuff. I mean, the guys that I know who are most successful don't have all that stuff, you know, and to me.
I tell you, my poor dad, you know, he's Stanford, Northwestern, University of Chicago.
Right.
And when he got fired, it didn't mean anything.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why, you know, I speak, and but the main reason I wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad 20 years ago is I could see this crisis coming, and I could see this crisis coming just because back in 1972, when I was flying off a carrier in Vietnam, you know, my rich dad sent me a letter that said Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and I had no idea what that meant. He said, "Watch out, the world's going to change," and damn it, has it changed.
Right, right.
You know, more than just gold and money. You know, technology's jumped in, globalization's jumped in. You look at it today, AI is going to replace many doctors and lawyers and accountants.
No question. No question. Yeah. I mean, AI can do a lot more in terms of diagnosis, and if you're looking at it even in surgery right now with these various robotics and things like that, I mean, it's just a matter of time. How about in terms of the future here? What are we looking at? I mean, obviously, when we talk about the gold standard in Nixon, the recovery there was, I mean, you want to talk about that a little bit. Probably not everybody knows about the petrodollar and how that recovered the economy. But eventually, this is going to be an economy that's going to be petrol free. What happens then?
Well, I don't know if it's petrol free, but what happened after 1971, where it came off the gold standard, and then Nixon and Kissinger cut a deal with Saudi Arabia, and we became a petrodollar. And what that meant, if Japan bought oil from Saudi Arabia, it had to trade in dollars, not yen. And it gave the dollar tremendous hegemony over the world economy.
Right.
So today, Russia and China are cutting a deal, and they've already cut it. They're going to trade. China's going to buy oil from Russia and pay them in yuan, but the yuan is going to be backed by gold.
Yep.
So I watch that. I go, Jesus Weezus,
Yeah.
So I've been backing up the truck. I mean, there's a time to buy and a time not to buy. And in my opinion, I've been wrong, but I think it's the time to buy gold coins, not gold ETFs. I don't buy anything fake. And an gold ETF like GLD is fake simply because it's not backed by any gold. It's only backed by dollars. If I sell my ETF, I'm just going to get dollars. I don't get gold.
Yeah.
So I'm going as hard asset as I can right now. I'm even buying avocado farms and all that. I'm just getting out of paper. Anything paper and fake or cyber, I'm out.
Yeah, I can't figure out, because I know what you're talking about with the essentially a gold-backed yuan. When that announcement was made, why gold didn't just skyrocket? I mean, I would have thought that would have been
because they don't want it to. It's all suppressed in the futures and swap markets.
Uh-huh.
And it's basically the rich are buying it. It's called interbank trade. It's not retail trade. The average person, even Americans, they're not the brightest match in the box when it comes to money.
Right. And that goes for doctors.
And school teachers are way out there.
Right.
School teachers aren't even in the box of matches.
Sure.
When it comes to money.
Right, sure.
But when it comes to labor unions, school teachers are very smart.
Yep, absolutely.
That's my poor dad.
Yeah. I want to shift a little bit and just, talk a little bit about you and your career and stuff. I mean, having had so much success in your life, financial, otherwise, when you look back and you say, okay, this is real wealth, what does that mean? I mean, I'm not talking about just money, but what does it mean to be really wealthy as a human being?
You don't need money. In other words, when on the 20th anniversary, I produced 3 books. One is called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the 20th anniversary edition. The book is the same, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the same, but what I wrote about was what changed and why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and why almost everything I predicted came true. The second book is called Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, What is Real Financial Education? And the third book is More Important Than Money, It's a Team. So what that is saying to everybody is everything they teach you in school actually keeps you poor.
Yeah.
It's sad. You know me, I'm not the brightest match in the box either, but I hang out with some pretty smart guys in my box, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but I mean.
No, but, we all have different intelligences,
Sure.
And mine definitely wasn't academic.
Right.
So mine was quite the opposite of you. I was pretty good at machine guns and rockets.
Yeah.
That was my specialty in Vietnam. I can shoot. But they don't have much use for it here in the States.
Yeah. Although I do think it's kind of ironic that, your father being so heavily involved with education, ultimately, the apple doesn't fall that far from the tree. I mean, you're an educator. You just chose to educate outside of the the mainstream sort of educational system, and fortunately made a little bit more money doing that.
See, education's important,
right?
But education is more important than ever before. But what kind of education?
Right.
And I always say there's 4 types. One is academic, reading, writing, arithmetic. You got to have it. Number 2 is professional. That's what doctors, lawyers, accountants have. Most people don't have it because they have a Bachelor of Arts degree. Number 3 is financial education, which very few people have. And number 4 is spiritual education, which is I learned at military school. The first lesson I learned at the academy is mission. What is your mission? Then duty, honor, code, respect, courage, and that. And that's not taught in business school because I went for my MBA and I learned nothing. Nothing.
Right. So is having a mission and being able to carry that out real wealth?
Well, I think everybody has a gift. That's why I kind of chuckle with you every time because, you're every Asian parent's dream, right? You became a doctor. And my mother was a nurse, and she says, "Why don't you become a doctor?" I said, "Mom, I'm flunking out of school.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't even get in." But somehow I got into Naval Academy and all that because I played football. But without that, I would probably be without a college degree.
Sure.
I was not accepted. Even the University of Hawaii rejected me. Imagine that. And I'm from Hawaii. I mean, they take chimpanzees for their graduate program.
The ironic part is, and as you mentioned, I'm Asian American background too, and South Asian American, and my mom wanted me to be a doctor, but my dad actually, who was a real estate guy and used to talk about cash flow all the time when I was a kid, and I didn't know what he was talking about. I thought he was unsophisticated, but he did not want me to go to medical school, and he told me.
Yeah,
then,
remember at the New Orleans Investment Conference we just came back from?
Yeah.
They had, which by the way, everybody has a chance to go to the New Orleans Investment Conference. It's once a year in New Orleans, but they had Tucker Carlson, and he's on Fox, and he stood. Did you hear him say, "I begged my kids not to go to college"?
Wow.
He says they still go to college. They don't listen to him, but I begged them, please don't go to college because it'll mess your brain up.
Yeah, yeah.
And so more and more of that is coming about because people are realizing the academic system has another agenda, and it's not to educate you. There is another agenda under, like some people say something, but, like when a guy goes up to a woman at the bar and says, "May I buy you a drink?" He really doesn't want to buy a drink. He's hoping to get lucky. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
That's what I mean by another agenda on the thing. And teachers have another agenda.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why when I talk to teachers, I'm always looking for their hidden agenda.
Yeah, and for my dad, what it was that he was highly educated. He came part of that Indian brain drain back in the '60s, and he came as an engineer, and he just ended up buying some real estate, and it was sort of like me, frankly, reading Cash Flow Quadrant. He had just opened his eyes, and it was like he had this little secret that he couldn't get across to me because I was so blinded by academia, but yeah, that was kind of that was his approach. And a lot of people don't believe me because he's like, of course, you're Indian, your dad's probably really happy. No, he's like, I told you so is what he's saying right now. But listen, Robert, before we go, I do want to take a chance, to thank you for what you've done for me and really for millions of people in this country. I mean, I really mean this in that I don't think there's probably anyone in the history of the world who's inspired as many entrepreneurs as you. I really believe that. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you.
And it's
I don't necessarily do that for that reason, but thank you anyway.
Well, it's definitely somebody needed to do this, and it's really unbelievable to me at how many incredible successful entrepreneurs I know. Now I live in Montecito, right, where everybody's an entrepreneur because nobody works around here during the day. And and frankly, including myself, and all these people that I know who cite your work as the origin of their success. And that must be something that you're really proud of. And I'm just curious, I mean, do you ever think about that? Because you've got to know the impact that you've made.
I take notice of it, and it's nice, but you've seen me enough times now. I shy away from that.
Yeah.
I don't like being surrounded by people. I'm a very shy person.
Yeah.
But anyway, if I could leave it with this, why those three books, the 20th anniversary of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it explains why I wrote the book in the first place. The book remains the same.
Right.
The second thing is why the rich are getting richer. It's how debt and taxes make the rich richer. And then the third book is more important than money, is important of a team. And I think we're going into, I hope I'm wrong, I think we're going into the biggest crash in world history soon.
Yeah.
And that's why the better you're prepared for it, the better off you're going to be. And that's why, me, the reason I went to the New Orleans Investment Conference is because most of those guys on display there are entrepreneurs, a lot of them in the precious metals, gold and silver and stuff like that. But I think people have to open their minds today to get out of the idea of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs and an IRA and those things because you're trapped. I think that if this stock market goes down, there's going to be bankruptcy after bankruptcy after bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And so that's why I speak and I write and I go with that, because I don't know, I'm going to interview Jim Rogers, one of the most famous investors of all time. He was partners with Solar in the Quantum Fund. And he's saying right now he's going to stay as far away from millennials as possible. And he says the reason for that is they don't know what it's like to be in a bad economy.
Right.
And he says they'll become dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
They said they think that all they know is good economy. Mommy and daddy took care of them, all that. They have safe rooms in school, and they all think the world owes them a living. But he says they're going to become the most dangerous people because they've never known what it's like to really have to think differently, out of the box, and scramble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff happening. I hope the crash doesn't come. And Facebook took me off. They kicked myself and Rickards off, Jim's Rickards, because they said we want people to be happy. Yeah. Yes, I want people to be happy too, but I don't want them wiped out financially.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why I write my books and I talk and I speak. It's not because I make that much money from my books, but I make a lot of money from real estate because I use debt and I pay no taxes. That's the secret to wealth, which is why the rich are getting richer. You don't work for money, you use debt for money, and you don't pay taxes. If you can do that, you're a smart dude. And so that's why I have my team like Kenny McElroy and all those guys and the real estate guys and their crews. That's where you get smarter. You don't get smarter about that in school.
That's right. Again, I appreciate it very much. Again, the latest book is How the Rich Are Getting Richer.
Why?
Why the rich are getting richer.
They didn't go to school.
That's right. It's outstanding, as are all of Robert Kiyosaki's books. Make sure you pick up a copy, and we'll be right back. What do the Rothschilds, the Romneys, and the billionaire hedge fund managers know that you don't about growing and protecting wealth? As you might imagine, the wealthy have a few tricks up their sleeves. One strategy allows you to grow wealth tax-free at a compounding rate with no volatility. It protects your money from creditors and lawsuits, and it lets you invest the same money in two different places at the same time. How about that for amplifying wealth? To learn more, go to wealthformulabanking.com. Again, that's wealthformulabanking.com. Now, welcome back to the show, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that discussion with Robert Kiyosaki. This was a really big honor for me and an interview that I have been wanting to do for a long time. And it's not a coincidence that I timed the release of this episode on New Year's 2018. Now, New Year's is one of the times of the year when most people feel a little bit reflective. And that said, I can't think of a better time to read Robert's new book, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, which he calls sort of the graduate level version of Cash Flow Quadrant. Feel free to use my Amazon link in order to get this book. You simply go to wealthformula.com and go to the resources section. You'll also see a link to Cash Flow Quadrant, which again, for me, was a transformative book. I mean, if I could give it any better plug, I would, but it just single-handedly, completely flipped a switch and changed my life. Robert's writing style is very accessible, but his message is profound, right? I mean, you can read this. You can read his books, and you can be, at a lot of different academic levels. But the message is really profound because there is simplicity in there that I think is probably inspired more millionaires than any modern business school. Every time Robert comes out with a new book, I devour it. And again, I can't encourage you enough to get into this work. Anyway, that's it for me today on Wealth Formula Podcast. This is Buck Joffrey signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast. Visit us on the web at wealthformula.com. The information contained in this podcast are opinions, not fact. As always, consult your own financial team before making any investment. See you next time.